joining us. This is a forum, so really the format is to be open and discussing issues that are on our agenda. So for today, we really only have two. We have really EDI in a general sense. We are going to provide an update on the Racial Equity Task Force and their 6 recommendations. Myself and Anthony Taylor will do that a little bit later. I know that Provost Shelton will have to leave at 4 though, and so we want to make sure that we provide a lot of opportunity to kind of discuss really equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I apologize. 1 second. Another computer going. So, does anyone else run 2 Zoom meetings at the same time? Don't answer that question. Don't answer that. By the way, I'm not in it, but in particular the EDI issue. And I'll start with the second round of anti-Asian American violence that is appearing. And so as an Asian American and as a son of Chinese immigrants, obviously it's disconcerting and disappointing. But at the same time, I see it again as a continued opportunity for us to grow as a country as we address these issues, right? And so I share that as context of again, the diversity, literally and figuratively, of EDI issues and how they are so pervasive in so many ways. And I wanted to offer that as context in the sense of how our colleagues are addressing and experiencing EDI issues and challenges in many ways in their lives, right? And I think that in talking to Provost Shelton, one of the things that we've heard a lot about is the issues related to caregivers, both for children and parents and grandparents and loved ones, and especially during COVID, and the annual review process and the concern and anxiety and stress of the fact that these realities mean that they cannot be as productive, they should not be as productive, and they should not feel guilty about that, and in particular, not penalized at the end, either in the annual review process or later on in promotion and tenure. So Elisa Levenstein has been a huge advocate in my ear and a leader on campus, and speaks very well and articulately about this issue. Talking to Provost Shelton, the other reason why we wanted to make this a forum discussion is because we want to pay more than lip service, right? We do agree it's an important priority. Now we have to figure out how to operationalize that. And so this forum is the kind of the middle step between trying to put forward some action items to the faculty senate and to the university to actually take action on something that we all agree with. So so I'm going to stop there, and we've invited Lisa to join us, and obviously Terry has some thoughts as well. And we do want to make it a forum, so definitely questions, concerns, responses are very much welcome. So with that being said, I want to hand it over to Lisa. Good to see you.
Thanks so much, Anthony, and thanks to you all for inviting me. Thank you also to Provost Shelton because I know that this is a topic that's very dear to your heart as well, and you've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes, but also there's so many people on campus who I've been talking to who have, I see Julia there, people who have been like engaged in this work for a long time and have been thinking about this. So while I'm here to, say a few words, I just want to kind of acknowledge that there is a larger collective here of people who have been working on these issues and who really care about them. So I wanted to give you a little bit of context, which I did provide if you had time to read the letter that was included with the materials for today. A letter that we wrote, the Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies program wrote to the chancellor, but also provost, deans. We sent it pretty widely, and we also, hopefully some of you all received it as well. We tried to make sure everyone knew we had written this book, just kind of talking about the urgency of that moment. If you can remember, even July 2020, right? We had just gone through that insane turnaround to pivot online. And then we really were very aware at that point that this pandemic was not something that was going to disappear. It was something that was here. And we were seeing that the historical disparities in care work, women, Black, Indigenous, and people of color and working class people taking on disproportionate amounts of care work while also being provided with less social support for that work, that this disparity was becoming even more pronounced under COVID. And that women in particular were more likely to pick up the additional household labor created by COVID. We knew that. Not to say that there weren't, so many fathers as well helping with, their kids being home and everything. But also that there were communities in Greensboro and elsewhere, Black, Latinx, Indigenous communities that were hit particularly hard by COVID as well, and that those created additional burdens. And then we also, of course, see disparities on our campus with who students are coming to, who are the people who are doing that kind of hidden labor of mentoring students, mentoring other faculties, being the support people, being the people who are on the committees, the people who are doing the work. And we know that labor has not lessened because of the pandemic, but in many ways it's exploded. So we were bringing up these issues in this letter that we wrote. We also had a list of requests, including forming a committee of staff members to create a comprehensive plan for staff who we knew their communities were hit hard, and they were, yet still required to come on campus sometimes when we were not, to create a fund to help university employees pay for the additional dependent care that they were going to need if schools did not reopen, to allow faculty to repurpose research funds that maybe they were going to take a trip somewhere, but that trip was not possible, to be able to use those funds for care needs that they had for their families, to suspend normal expectations for employee productivity until a vaccine was available. And that was, not just caregivers, that was across the board. Everyone is impacted by COVID, right? And we were all living for anyone right now and right then is very stressful and challenging, right? So to just kind of have that in our minds when we're thinking about this year, right? That to kind of suspend normal expectations and take into account these challenges. And to waive all non-essential faculty service until there's a vaccine, such as curriculum reform, peer teaching reviews, attendance at non-essential faculty meetings, reviewing curriculums, that there's a lot of stuff that wasn't urgent, that didn't need to be done this moment. And we asked that those kinds of things be put on pause. Now, most of our requests were not granted. We did receive quite a bit of, I think where we saw the most work happening behind the scenes had to do with P&T, right? And the extensions on tenure clocks that were given, and very wonderfully, in fact, I know of, I just had a colleague in Wisconsin who was just saying that they can't even get that in their institution, right? And so UNCG was wonderful in terms of I think we've been just extraordinary, in fact, in terms of the changes that we've made with our P&T process, in terms of letting people opt into year extensions. And we've done that twice, and I think that's fantastic. Some of these other things these were our ideas, they were not followed up on. so I'm not trying to say nothing was done, but there are certainly, there are some ways that we've been doing some great things, and some ways that I think that the stress and the additional labor that has happened has not been recognized or compensated. I don't know that it will ever be compensated, but I was asked to speak about annual reviews. So I will say that so what I would like to do is just share with you a form that I'm going to use. I sent it out as well, a form that I'm going to use, or something like it, for the annual reviews for the faculty in my program. And I'll tell you that I like this form because it both enables faculty to account for the way that their work was restricted due to COVID because of childcare, because of interrupted travel, because the archives or labs were closed, right? So it allows faculty to kind of talk about what they couldn't do because of COVID, but also gives them a time to acknowledge and talk about the additional labor that they incurred in various kinds of ways. And you'll see from the form, there are all kinds of labor that can be accounted for here. And I'd actually love your ideas and suggestions if there's more things folks might want to think of as putting on the list, or other things, or things we haven't taken into account. This is based on some colleagues. This is actually just taken from some colleagues in Wisconsin. The women's studies programs, all the directors of them, were all on a list, and nationally, and we share these kinds of resources. So when COVID hit, a lot of people are doing this kind of work on their campuses, and we've been sharing resources. So this is one resource I found that I thought was really helpful. And so I will, am I allowed to share my screen? Do I have that capacity? Okay, great. Let me find this for you.
I have it pulled up right here if you'd like me to share it for you.
Share it, that would be great. You can do that for me. Thank you so much.
Is this it?
Yes. Perfect. Wait, how come I think let me just see. I
can see it okay, Lisa, if you can.
Great. I can. Okay. You can see it. Great. Now I can see it too. Okay. So I unfortunately, could you make it a tiny bit bigger, or I need to get my glasses? I need to find them. Thank you. Okay, so you can see COVID. So you can just kind of go through this rubric, and the faculty can, so were professional activities canceled? Did changes to courses occur? Additional teaching requirements added? How did advising change? Things like that, right? So people who are all this, my advising, I usually advise students and it takes half an hour, but now that these meetings are taking hours because the students have more to say, right? How was your scholarship disrupted? Your publications disrupted? Was the amount of time normally dedicated to teaching and course prep increased due to the pandemic, right? I mean, this is like what we're talking about when we talk about hidden labor and labor that's happening that's uncompensated, right? And so for a lot of us, I'm sure we can find ways people are going to will be able to really recognize and see the different kinds of labor that people have been doing by using these kinds of questions. And as I'm saying, I see this as kind of a jumping off point, not like a definitive list in any kinds of ways. And were these disruptions related to and/or exacerbated by caregiving responsibilities? Did you dedicate additional work hours to online and technological trainings, right? How many faculty went and did some kind of additional training in online course delivery? I think a lot, right? Why we should be recognizing that as part of this process and holding that up as, okay, that was labor. That was important work that you did. So these are some of the things, the kinds of categories I am thinking of using with my faculty. And so I would be, and so this is supposed to be a discussion, and I'm going to stop now, but this is just an idea I have that I wanted to share with you.
Terry, did you have any thoughts or comments about this?
Sure. I think it's really very helpful. And there were a couple of things that came to mind. I think one, just reinforcing that we share the values of being wise and equitable in setting the expectations. I think that having examples like the rubric is great, and maybe one follow-up is someplace where there's a repository of beginning to look at, what might be some guidance like this that folks can begin to use, because it varies depending on your department, your discipline, and it just helps to have ideas. I think the idea of being clear and having that transparent conversation around and a little bit more detail. I think one of the things folks that we can help each other with is really, Lisa, those are excellent examples of ways in which there are hidden labor that people may not have thought about. And so being able to share some of those, whether it's like you said, the travel restrictions, or, while I haven't heard a ton of examples about this, even the flip of that, increased productivity. We know that some folks were able, because they couldn't work on their research in the same way, might have pivoted and submitted a grant, but also being able to say that, you don't want to represent that as a new annual expectation with that. Shifts in research focus. And so thinking about in what ways has the pandemic for COVID, but also when we're talking about equity, the pandemic related to all the work and the awareness and the trauma around structural racism as well, which for some individuals is hitting, a double whammy, if you will. So what are the interruptions in research, in teaching and in service, which may be another way, depending on, how you're focusing this, that allows you to really peel off and be very specific, because it might not have impacted in one way, but it may have in another. For example, I do know there are folks across campus who, because they felt compelled, actually increased their contributions in a particular area in COVID specific ways. So, increases in service that was directly related to this. Increase in service and mentoring of students or fellow faculty members in the ways that we talked about. So I think, one thing we can do is take a look at, creating a repository of some of those pieces. We also want to try to both create a framework in saying that not only is this okay to consider, but it is also the value of the kind of culture and the organization that we want to have, and that it's expected. So, whether it's suspending expectations or my friendly amendment is, because sometimes that makes it feel lesser than, that it's really what are appropriate expectations for success in this time, where folks are being very productive. And as many of you have heard me say many times, that even just our daily duties that we all do are taking more effort for many of us, whether it's, navigating, Zoom screens, teaching kids at home, doctor's appointments, all of those things. So I think, part of this is making sure that, we have that conversation and we're giving people guidance for that. The other piece, at least I will also say that there are examples of sometimes we can't be as flexible as we would like given the source of funds, but where that flexibility exists, trying to make sure that we can direct those funds that were there. So for example, I'll give an example with internal grants. We that come out of the Office of Research, for so many people, we've either granted extensions or relooked at the scope of work and what made sense because they could not travel. Are examples of ways in which we want to make sure that we're being supportive. We do know that as these HERF funds or COVID relief funds come out, the good news is as each one has come out, it's been slightly less restrictive. And I know that there's a commitment as we look at what might be both HERF 2 and what might be coming in HERF 3 to look at ways where, again, in compliance with whatever those regulations are, how can we flexibly use those that support, the ways in which COVID has impacted our institution, in particular, our students. And so I can tell you there is a commitment to look creatively around that in ways that we can try to help with that. The other thing I would say that's coming, and we have gotten requests, so our Alan Boyette and Andrea Whitley in our office are working on this, is we did, make sure that those extensions were there, but now that they're coming up, I think folks want to make sure that those extensions are being applied appropriately. And deans and chairs have said, I want to make sure I'm interpreting this the right way, especially when those COVID related extensions are interacting with other things like FMLA and, just events that might happen, maternity or paternity leave. So we will be finalizing a document that I hope will help, because to be honest, it's confusing for me when I'm going, okay, if you got these two, how does this extend, when you would be reviewed? So we'll try to keep making sure that the changes that were made, that people are able to utilize those, and that they're as clear as possible. So that'll be coming up. The other piece is we did talk about and encouraged people to add those impact statements that are there. One of the things that I have heard from some of you, but also has been, a discussion across the country, is how do you take advantage of those, but without disclosing too much? And so, continue to have a discussion and share guidance about best practices about what might feel the most comfortable. So some places have suggested that, folks just have, I had COVID related issues that were due to family bereavement, and that's it, not going into more detail than you feel comfortable, or, medical or whatever. And so I think that's the other piece, is as we really get into the implementation of this, want to hear how it's working on the ground, how we can provide additional support and guidance and clarification, but also make sure that people feel comfortable using the options that are available, but not disclosing more than they feel comfortable doing. So those are just a couple of things with that, but I'm really interested in listening on this forum, but continuing, both Anthony's, we've had multiple conversations with that, and do see this as a way in which we need to operationalize the university's commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion too, with that. So.
Thank you, Terry. Are there any comments or questions? It's a good time to ask now. While we're waiting on some comments or questions. So, Terry, one of the things that we initially did in the fall was Provost Coleman's memo, and one of the responses, of course, from that memo was it's really good, but at the same time asking for a little more clarity. And I'm thinking in terms of when, say, within our department, we're asked to do the annual review, maybe similar to what Lisa said, having some type of standard guide that comes with that request, right? And the reason for that is because I think, like most of us, when we're asked to do the annual review, it's also occurring when we're working on our grading, or really the first week or two of the summer, and so it doesn't come at the most convenient time. And I think that having that playbook might be a good reminder for us, so that as we're kind of motoring through the annual reviews of our colleagues, that we kind of have that in front of us, because I think that is my concern, is that we forget at the time of delivery, right? And I also really like your point about the kind of opt-out or opt-in issue. So I know when COVID first began, that was a long conversation with Provost Dunn about making sure that the act of disclosure doesn't provide stigma and a real barrier in requesting, for example, the initial extension for the P&T clock. So I really like your idea of that. And I guess if any way that we can operationalize that in some type of second memo, or even, guide that goes with hey folks, it's time to do annual reviews. I think those are all really good. And then my last thought would be activity insight. I don't know if there's anything we could add to activity insight as like an optional category, but as much as we grumble about activity insight, it does provide a good forum for us as far as making sure that we're doing the reviews correctly. So
Thanks, Anthony. We can for sure send out the reminder, and I will take a look at what options are there in activity insight. That will also help reinforce. And then I think to that idea, when we send out that reminder, maybe that's an opportunity to include a link to, the rubric that Lisa shared, or there are a couple of other ones that, I know I'm going to be using with the centers, for example, that report up through the Office of Research, that have some things that are really helpful for that particular review or scope of work. So we can work on both of those.
Yeah, and I think, Terry, your point about, again, the opportunity to just say that there's something COVID related and then also be allowed to not go into specifics is a very important point. And I think I want to talk about that at the committee chair meeting this Friday. And I think that is also something that I want the Senate to look at, to just confirm that, because I do know that in some ways is in contrast to some of the initial instructions as far as that context statement, right? Which is be as thorough as possible as kind of a defensive posture, right? So, but I do like that idea, because I think that ultimately we don't want to be in a situation where, again, it serves as a barrier because people don't want to disclose those details. But I think if we don't codify that, Terry, I think that different departments are going to approach that differently, right? In terms of you need to justify, as opposed to, no, you don't need to justify. That's a value that we're trying to commit to. And I think, like we've discussed, we're not trying to mandate it, but it is definitely a strong recommendation. So.
Can I say something? Actually, I have my hand up, but I don't know if that can be seen.
Sorry. Yes, you do. Yes, I see it now. Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Yes. Hi. My name is Barbara Campbell Thomas. I'm a faculty center from the School of Art. And I just really, really, really deeply appreciate the fact that this is on the agenda right now. I will say that from my perspective there, and thinking about particularly junior faculty in my department who are largely who in terms of these caregiving situations are, of course, indeed women. I'm really, really worried about them and about the ways in which this time, in so many unspoken ways, is greatly impacting them. And I feel as though the deliberate calling out that is in this rubric that Lisa has shown us is super important, because I think unless one is in this situation, it can be quite easy to not really understand all of these aspects. And, you know, I, for one, am going to be bringing this to the School of Art because I think that, I don't know, we're heading on a year. A lot of people, a lot of women are hitting a wall. I mean, there are all these New York Times articles. It's like every day another one about women sort of falling apart. And it's real. And I just think there are parts of me that feel like a lot more needs to happen.
Thanks, Barbara, for sharing that. And I think if we can give, guidance like the rubric, other examples that people can pick and choose, because I think the other part is not just in making sure the folks that are doing the review are prompted, but it may have the reverse impact of going, reminding you how much extra stuff you had done. But, I think by thinking in these categories, it does help you to articulate, what in ways that feel authentic, how this has played out for you in your life and with your particular scholarship and teaching that's there. So I appreciate that reminder, and I think we can make sure that we've got other examples, and this is a good one that helps us to look at it. That, when you talked about hitting the wall, I was listening to someplace, I can't remember, radio, and they had somebody who works in disaster relief and said that, really this is what we're seeing is so common to folks who go in, after a tsunami or after, some horrendous natural disaster, for example, and you're in that adrenaline mode of push through and whatever. And then, about, it varies depending on the significance, but they said, 6 months, 9 months later, when it's like, oh no, this is what life is going to be like. That wall, and some of it is just physical fatigue, that having done it for so long. But I think being able to look at what have we learned from other places where people are under siege for a long period of time and yet still needing to do multiple jobs. So anyway, I appreciate you sharing that, and we'll continue to look for ways that we can make sure that we're supporting folks in the implementation of this, because this is where the rubber is meeting the road. To Moses' comment, we do know that folks are, different units are on different review cycles and whatever, but I think, it's a good reminder that we can send a reminder out when some units are doing their reviews, but it wouldn't hurt, to make sure, and we may have a permanent provost by fall. I'll leave some notes and whatever that we remind again when those reviews happen for those units that are on a calendar year, because again, we're going to be looking at this next year as well. And that way we're just continuing to make sure we have that support, that it doesn't just end at the end of this year, or end when we hopefully all get vaccines. We know that we're going to be dealing with this for a while. So thank you.
And I think Chanel asked a good question about what does it really mean to not have to justify. And I think Chanel, and I want to mention to all my colleagues that really it should be just fine for any of us to feel COVID. In fact, it would be almost impossible not to have some impact. So as a man and a father, my daughter that was off to college came back, and she had a lot of emotional challenges with the election, anti-agent sentiment, COVID, all being together in the same household and making too much noise. And so there's all these things that it's not only something we should justify, but I think, as Terry was saying, when we talk about equity, diversity, inclusion, and our commitment to equity of experience, is there's a hall pass for everybody. In you know, I'm being a little facetious, but really the point being that if you're not, that it's almost expected that you're impacted in whatever way that is, and to expect normal performance is not really acceptable, honestly, or not being, it's not being sensitive to the realities that we're all facing, right? And you know, and also say, the last thing I'll say is that we all have to still do our jobs, but that takes even more energy in the context of all the things that are out of our control, right? So Asian American sentiment, I brought that up because my parents are 82 and retired, lived very good, honorable, productive lives, and they're 82 and I'm worried about them, right? And that is an emotional reality that makes, you know, the normal business more, it takes more energy, and it impacts you know, me in many different ways. So Chanel, I think you know, I'll work with Provost Shelton on this, but I think that we want to state that you really should not have to defend or justify when you state that you have COVID related XYZ. That I think that ultimately to not have it might be a little bit maybe, you know, too brave of you. And it's okay. And I think, as Terry said, a lot of us are actually being productive too, but even that comes at a cost, right? In terms of the energy that occurs, right? And so I think ultimately, in my mind, we want to take the pressure off of each other, right? To be good colleagues. Hey, it's okay. Whether you're having a great year or a bad year, it doesn't matter, because this is unprecedented, and we want to show care for one another by giving each other that grace. So I think. So Chanel, I think your point is, you know, obviously Terry is very committed to this issue, and I'll work with her at the Senate level to just, again, provide guidance and operationalize what these values might look like. But I think the point that you're talking about, and I have heard a lot from the Bryan School about, which is great, because that's one of the reasons why the Bryan School is so highly rated. But in this capacity, I think we really want to urge, you know, our colleagues to give each other a break. So.
I just want to point out too that Julia had, I know our faculty are very concerned about their colleagues that are staff, and that, you know, Julia put in the chat that HR is also working on this as well. You know,
That'd be helpful
to look at their performance reviews. So, you know, we ask everybody to be supportive of students as they're going through this. It's very hard to do that if you're not supported as well. And, you know, whether it's a faculty member or a staff member, or students, how we create, Anthony, as you said, that grace, and how we interact with each other, which includes that trust is really important. So thanks, Julia, for popping that in.
Yes, thanks, Julia. We'd love, yeah, please share that, and we can use that as well. So, all right. Are there any comments or additional questions? So what I'd like to do now is, and Lisa and others, again, the next steps are we're going to be meeting with the committee chairs on Friday. I meet regularly with Terry, and you know, we'll provide any support she needs as far as you know, providing kind of the faculty senate's you know, stamp of approval. Maybe a resolution. Not big on resolutions, but this might be one that we could do just to add weight, Terry, to your guidance. So. All right. With that being said, I'd like to invite our EDI committee chair, Anthony Taylor. So when Terry mentioned both Anthonys, that's Anthony 1 and Anthony 2. And so Anthony has been doing a lot of work, excellent work in terms of leading us in the EDI space. I do also have the slides available from the Racial Equity Task Force that came up with 6 recommendations that we could look at briefly as well. So, but Anthony, let me turn it over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, hi everybody. I think I'm part of 2 groups on campus, as many of you know, the Faculty Senate EDI Committee and the Faculty Senate Equity Task Force. I guess I'll talk about the FSEDI work a little bit and just tag in with what I'm hearing other people say today. I guess one of the things I'll just get out of the way, I'd like Terry Shelton to consider adding to her list that she's going to leave on her desk for the incoming provost. Our FSCDI committee looked at, we explored the possibility of, we had some concerns about the just stopping of the tenure clock in relation to one particular study that came out of, it was actually about parental leave, and it came out of the field of economics that showed that that parental leave policies that were designed to help everybody did not lower the rates of tenure for women, but it increased time to tenure for women. So it just set careers backward. And so I'm just wondering down the road when the pandemic is over and we're back to some kind of normal, I would just like to see there to be some look at that progress and consider what possibilities there are for remediating that, any delays to progress that occurred during the pandemic. We tried to find some alternatives to tenure clock stopping policies, and we really couldn't find any. So I could only say we had that concern, but we couldn't really offer a viable alternative. So there's that. I hope that administration will look at in upcoming years. The FSEDI committee kind of sits in a funny spot on the campus. It's kind of in between things, and so I'm looking for ways to constructively be in between. And here's what we're looking at these days. Since the framework came out from the Chancellor's Office, from the fellows, we've been looking at that framework and trying to think about ways to enact that on campus. And one of the things we consistently hear is that the EDI consciousness, to put it that way, is uneven on campus, that it's there's good work happening and it's happening in pockets, and what is happening is not necessarily known to other parts of the campus. And I've had several faculty in the last year, over the summer, I met with a lot of people that are looking to engage, but don't know how to engage. They kind of don't know the terrain of the whole campus or where they can fit in. And so I'm trying to fill in some of those gaps. And so again, I encourage everyone to look at that framework and be thinking about what things you can do that are within your sphere of influence. And I'm really trying to just reach people who want to engage and just don't know how to. So one of the things we're looking at is to collect guidance documents from the units around searches and to try to share those with the wider community. I can speak for CVPA because I was involved in writing those, that our dean, when he arrived, put out a procedures document that was really clear about how searches are going to happen. And he took some ownership of the search process that our previous deans hadn't. And then our EDI committee wrote a supportive document that went into more detail about how bias happens, or how you need to recruit differently than in the past, or a lot of the pitfalls of that terrain. And it'd be nice if every unit could read that and draw from that document and decide to use or reject those ideas. But those ideas currently aren't very known across campus. I know that HHS is working on there. I'm going to get these all confused because there's just so many pockets of campus. I know I'll likely get some reports from School of Ed, from HHS, from the College of Arts and Sciences, and hopefully can share that with all the deans or with the faculty at large soon. We're also hearing reports of equity audits happening on campus where the if you think about what structural racism is, it's really not so much about of course the interpersonal piece and thinking of different humans as having different value, that matters. But when we're looking at structural racism, we're often looking at where resources are going. Are resources going to one kind of faculty member or one group of people, or really looking at how the institution benefits some groups over other groups. So we know of a couple different equity audits happening on campus. And again, to be able to get details about what those processes are, what are you looking at, how are you going about it, and maybe share results. So there are no results back yet, but I'd like to make it known what's happening on campus so that other units can take that up. Those are two main areas. I think I'm forgetting one. But that's enough for now. I guess with the time the way it is, I'd rather, like Anthony Chow was suggesting, take some time and look at the equity task force, the system levels report, and discuss that, because I think there's a lot that would be helpful for us.
Great, Anthony. Thank you for that. And actually, before we do, I did want to speak to the issue of P&T and the concerns around justifiably the delay in promotion that comes with a pay increase, right? And so one of the things that I would like us to explore is maybe looking at promotion and tenure separately. And I don't know, Terry, if how viable that is, but I guess one of the ways, Anthony, we might be able to address that is looking at the trajectory of the person and possibly being able to look at promotion to directly address that concern, right? So I don't know, maybe that's a possibility because it's a germane concern, and that's definitely something that has been mentioned from the very beginning, right? Is that's a negative, and so I think that's a fair point. So Terry, and one other thing to follow up with you on, but I know the P&T guidelines committee are also looking at revisiting the guidelines anyway. So I think that, and Alan is plugged into that. So I think maybe we could look into that as well. And I'm perfectly fine if no one else has done that. Let's do it. Why don't people follow UNCG's lead on this? So, but anyway, good point, Anthony. And Terry, I'll follow up with you on that. Anthony, do you want to go through the slides then? Michaela has them ready to share, or yeah, there we go. Thank you, Michaela.
Well, I'm not prepared to offer a big presentation on those, but
oh yeah, she's got the slides. So yeah.
Is there one that has all of them on it, or is it looking at the?
It's basically looking at the 6 recommendations. So I'd be happy to go over it too if you like, because I've seen this at the faculty assembly level. So
yeah, why don't you take it?
Great. So yeah, if you just go back to that first slide. So essentially the committee has 6 primary recommendations. So you can see the recommendation along with action steps. So in this case, we're looking at the first recommendation being diversity and equity staffing to support inclusion and belonging. And so what is being discussed right now is, so one position has been created within the HR department, but another conversation is looking at potentially a VP of diversity reporting directly to President Hans. And so you could see there the different action steps. So assuming that happens or hoping that happens, you can see in terms of both at the system level and recommendations at the institutional level, again, just recognizing having someone that is taking the lead on this issue. So amongst the UNC institutions, 8 have diversity, a title or person that is directly in charge of diversity officer, and the other 9 do not. And so So that's a question and a discussion that's being had across the institutions. Michaela, next slide. Thank you. Representation, retention at all levels of the university. So you could see the action steps there, really obviously not just talking about it, but actually building a system of recruitment, hiring, promotion, and retention. And so you could see those recommendations. The word pipeline is a very good word in terms of, again, being very intentional about ensuring that when we are searching, both for faculty and students, that we're being very direct and strategic about where we're going to do that. You can see some of the other recommendations there. Number 3, assessing and modifying hiring and salary increases around promotion and tenure and retention. Yes, thank you, Julia. Looking at diversity of boards of trustees, basically looking at how board of trustees are selected and asking the question of whether they appropriately reflect both the faculty and student that they are leading. The idea of training, so an executive leadership institute, maybe both at the system level and also possibly at the institutions. And then also looking for number 6, kind of nomination selection process for Board of Governors awards to ensure equitable practices. Data and accountability. So I know that Andrea Hunter is working on a data dashboard, and just cut to the chase. What do the statistics tell us, and are there statistically significant irregularities across the board in terms of salary, retention, representation? What is the match between the faculty and the student body? So I'm very excited about that. So my understanding is that the UNC system has not invested as much in the data and accountability area, and I believe that they are fixing that soon. And you can see the recommendations there. Education. So basically developing and implementing a system-wide diversity, equity, inclusion education that can again provide consistent instruction for all of us at all levels, including training modules. And of course, part of what the institutions have to do is think about ways to incentivize or require that training is part of our workflow. Programs and activities in support of racial equity and inclusion. So looking at best practices and trying to generalize those across institutions. Piloting innovative programming, again, to ensure student success. Mental health support in terms of actual staffing at institutions. And again, training and resources for faculty in terms of how best to be ambassadors of EDI and being able to support our students and ourselves in these practices. And then the sixth one was added. So it was initially 5, but they added campus policing. So certainly as one of the variables that began this discussion nationwide, being consistent about campus policing, what that looks like, training, procedures, data around that to make sure that all of our campus police are practicing EDI best practices and ensuring that they're treating and applying their procedures and actions equitably. So anyway, I'm not going to read all that to you, but that is the 6 recommendations. And so definitely I've asked Anthony and the faculty senate to really look at these very closely. And again, I'll add that to a growing list of things I would need to talk to Terry about, but ways in which we could support this, right? So really, when I think about the formation of the Racial Equity Task Force, one of the things we asked for were resources, right? And so I think in the end, these are all great ideas, but the question are both the resources at the system level and obviously committing some resources at the institutional level to try to make these things happen. And I guess like most things, we don't have enough money, but the question is whether we need to prioritize this even in our current financial times. So this is where I'm asking Terry to commit $5 million to make this happen, right, Provost Shelton?
I'm going to get that money machine cranked up. But I think toward that end, and this is something that, we've had several conversations with different groups, is there are investments being made, but because we don't have, they're not necessarily centralized, I don't think we really have a good idea of the extent to which. So, I know that deans are putting money into things. We're funding, mentoring and leadership groups. There are efforts, course buyouts and that enable people to work on some of these issues, as well as, salary pieces. Are we doing enough? No. But I think, part of the ongoing work, and I think these recommendations will help, is to get a sense, and I know, Andrea, Julie, lots of folks are working on this around what are we doing? What are in the investments that are being made? How do we leverage those? And then I think it'll also point out, we're not doing anything in this area, or with an investment, we could really make a huge difference here. So your point about not just more money and more resources, which we know we need, but how do we do them in a really strategic and intentional way that will sustain that investment, is something that I think you'll see more of as we go on. Anthony Taylor said, he knows HHS is doing an audit, and we're doing something in research and engagement and different efforts all across campus. So that'll be another thing I think that will help us in looking at what's our current commitment. But to your point about data and dashboards and metrics and holding ourselves accountable is, so we said we were going to do X, Y, and Z. Did we invest? We invested how? What were the outcomes? What's left? What are the things that we need to continue to do? Because I think what we all appreciate is this is not a one and done kind of special cottage industry, to pull Andrea's wording. This is an approach. This is a value. This is who we want to be as an institution. So, it may be slower than folks would like, but I think gathering that information is really going to help us be smarter about what we're doing and being able to hold ourselves accountable for that. So, and with that, I'll say goodbye and look forward to hearing emails. And I have a long to-do list, Anthony Chow. So
sorry, Dr. Shelton.
We'll follow up. So see ya. Bye.
Right, thank you. And one of the questions, and maybe Julia Smith, in terms of trying to centralize those activities that Terry was talking about. So I think, and that may already be happening, but I know you and Andrea have been taking the lead on that. I guess any way that we can kind of support bringing together all the different activities that are occurring within our units already, and sharing best practices, I think would be wonderful. So.
Anthony, I'll just take liberty to say thanks for the plug for two-way communication. And the only way we know is to get your ideas and information to the fellows. We do our best to kind of keep track of what everyone is doing. But one of the great things about our university is that so many people are committed to EDI work. And I also serve as a member of the Diversity and Inclusion Council for the system. So if you have any thoughts about these recommendations that you would like shared up, Anthony can do that through his role, but I can also speak to that as well. So I just came to listen and here today, but if you'd like any follow-up, please feel free to reach out and I'll put my email in the chat.
Thank you, Julia. Appreciate all your work in this area. Thank you, Anthony, as well. Or as I affectionately call him, AT. He calls me AC. So thank you, Anthony, for everything. All right. So that being said, I'd like to introduce our wonderful IT folks, Todd Sutton and Chris Waters and Kimberly. They've been very gracious in collecting feedback and very intentional about how they are trying to collaborate with faculty and the stakeholders, not only through the Next Gen project, which is going to be a wonderful new website for us, but also a lot of other work in terms of trying to increase alignment between the technology that we have, which is, by the way, very robust, but aligning it even more closely with teaching and service and the work that we do and the technology that we need. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to the team. So Todd, Kimberly, go ahead.
Thanks, Anthony. Thank you all for allowing us to come and talk to you today. And I want to start off by just kind of echoing a little bit about what Anthony was just saying. We appreciate the partnership with you, Anthony, and with Faculty Senate and all of the conversations that we've had, not just around the web project, but because I know this will be the first major update for some of you, but just around everything we're doing to try to align technology to, make sure that we fulfill the mission of the university, but also do it in such a way that it enables each and every one of you to do the things that you need to do. Again, my name is Todd Sutton. I'm Associate Vice Chancellor for Learning Technology and Customer Success. I'm in Central IT. Joining me today is Chris Waters, who's the University Webmaster, and Kimberly Osborne, who's the Interim Vice Chancellor for Strategic Communications. I want to point out that she's not in IT, and she probably will want me to, say that very loudly, not to lump her in with us, right? But we have a great partnership with our friends in UC, and you'll see that when Chris and Kimberly begin to give you the update. Chris, you want to go to the next slide? So one of the things that my boss, Donna Heath, the CIO, likes to say all the time is that good technology is easy to use, but great technology is invisible. As many of you probably would attest, a lot of us don't use great technology every day. We use a lot of things that are cumbersome and clunky, but I can assure you that in every decision that we in Central IT try to make, we're looking for those technologies that, especially for new things that we look to take on, how can we make things great? And by that, how can we provide you all with systems that just get out of your way and allow you to do the things that you need to do? You shouldn't have to, think too much about how to use the technology that you need to do the job that you need to do. And so not every technology is there, but where we can shift the needle on some things, like with this web project, we want to look at the underpinnings of the web as sort of the scaffolding, as it says in the next paragraph, to allow us to not only present our message with the world, but also allow that sort of first handshake. And Chris, if you'll move on to the next slide, the first handshake with prospective students and others for UNCG, right? As I'm hard pressed to find anyone who did not learn what they know about UNCG today through the web or through our internet presence in some way, right? Whether it be mobile or traditional web, that kind of thing. And as you can see here, a lot of it is localized around the triad, but all over the state, you can see the pockets of where we're able to track traffic back to. It's very important that we present a very cohesive message, because it's our online identity and it's our outreach, and it's an opportunity for us to present our identity to the world, but also set an expectation for future relationships with students, right? And it's very key that once they come here, that they not get discouraged about the university by the experience they have online. You can also see in the pie chart there where the majority of the traffic is going, and we can answer questions about some of that later on. But as you can see, www, which is the main site, and admissions are the two largest areas where we see web traffic coming from, as you would expect, prospective students. So with that, I want to kick it over to my colleague, Chris Waters, to tell you a little bit more about the project.
Thanks, Todd. So, like Todd said, the web is a really key part of UNCG, just in the way that it presents us to the outside world and the way that it helps us share information internally. The web today is huge here. These numbers only represent part of what we can see from the outside. That means that things that are behind authentication, where you have to log in and get to them, that doesn't count. Certain kinds of software that you log into, that's not counted here. These are just pages, that Google can find where I can get accounts from the outside. That's a lot of content. This is for websites that we track and inventory that ITS maintains, and that's across 314 websites and 126 departments. So there's a lot of use of the web broadly at UNCG, and it's grown organically over the years. It's a really highly distributed environment. We've got contributors that are maintaining content from all over this surface area and more. It's been, relatively loosely governed. We've had governance around the web, and we've provided tools to establish brand before, and that's something that we're looking to improve upon. But it's starting to show its age because it grew up organically, and because it's been a while since we've kind of addressed our online look. Some years ago now, at this point, we went through kind of a brand refresh where, logos were updated, colors were adjusted, and we kind of modernized. That only partially rolled out to the web. We haven't really, addressed kind of a refreshed experience for our end users. And that leaves us in a place where we've got some years of change in the environment. And oftentimes you'll find inconsistencies where, there's an artifact of a prior age that we haven't quite cleaned up. And it's because there's all this kind of, wide space managed by a lot of different people in different areas. And it's really hard to wrangle. So talking a little bit about, just to give an example, a technical example, if we, are thinking about the way a student might experience this, they could come in and they arrive at the main website, but after navigating around, they may navigate to another website, and they have to put in, their Spartan ID and log in. Well, because the way things have worked historically, there are still pockets of things that don't use single sign-on, which is the technology that allows you to log in once and not have to enter your password anymore for things that are secure. In this kind of decentralized environment, a user can be prompted over and over again, and they have this really kind of start-stop experience that's not very streamlined. And then sometimes, because of the large amount of content we have, they may even find that they get to a resource that's kind of out of date or broken. And that's not the impression that we want to leave with students, with faculty or staff. I think that we can do better than that. So whenever we're talking about how we might do better, we tend to think about maybe a strategic approach. And the way that we're looking at the web in terms of strategy is these first two items are kind of operating in the operating space that we have, where we have effective governance. That means that we set rules that make sense for the work we need to do. We have more collaboration because we're a big place, and it's not like one central team can manage everything. We have to rely on one another. And that means that we need to talk more with one another and coordinate better between those groups. And so that's part of the way that we want to operate and improve those things. Whenever we start talking about the project that we're engaged in, we're focused more on these three other strategic points where we're looking for building toward audiences rather than trying to reflect the organizational structure of the university, which is oftentimes what you'll find in higher ed. You'll find that websites organize around kind of the org chart, departments, and that sort of thing. There is a place for that, but you also need to think about who your audience is and what they expect to find, what they need to find whenever they come and visit your web content. Providing better tools. We use WordPress here as a tool. You may or may not be familiar with that. It's a great tool that we can improve on. A lot of success in the current environment depends on a higher level of technical skill than what we want people to have to know. And so we're going to address that by improving the way that we use WordPress. And then improving training. An improved tool is really not that useful unless everybody knows how to use it. So one of the things that is also an outcome of this project is kind of raising everybody's common understanding of how to use the tools that we provide. And so whenever you do that kind of thing, the expectation is that things align. And from an end user perspective, they would just zip right on through their experience and they would have this much simpler kind of interaction getting what they need from the web. And that's ultimately what we're after, is improving that experience for the people that need to use the web and web content here. So in our project, we're focusing on three main kinds of outcomes here. We're looking at improving that user experience, and that's a lot focused around kind of the tooling and design that we provide in that refreshed kind of web interface that we are going to deliver as part of the project. We're also looking at operating efficiency, and that's that part that I mentioned where we're going to be looking at lowering the technical bar so that different areas on campus, they may not have a web developer, so to speak, assigned to maintaining web pages. But it'll become easier to take care of that content and make sure that it looks good, that's on brand, and that it's organized well. And then we're talking about improving engagement. A lot of that has to do with the way that we can bring visitors back because they know they can find things, the way that we can drive traffic through marketing efforts around enrollment. Those things are very important in a modern kind of strategy for higher ed. And we want to better support that than what we've been able to do in the past. So ultimately, when we're talking about what changes and what gets upgraded to this next generation platform, we're talking about the public facing websites. We're talking about the main website at www.uncg.edu. And we're talking about the school and unit and departmental web content that will be incorporated and linked to in that space. The things that we are not talking about at this point are, any kinds of content that's outside of the main EDU domain. And some areas do have different domain names registered for different purposes. Those are not going to be changed at this time. We're not talking about intranet resources. So anything that you've got that's kind of internally focused, right? That's not really for public consumption, that may be hosted inside of a storage platform or some other tool. We're not talking about that kind of content. We're not talking about any web delivered software. That's not part of the scope for this, or course related content. And if there's some sites on campus, like athletics is a good example of this, and university library, we'll want to work with them a little bit to make sure that the tools that they're using can adopt certain kinds of common branding, but they're separate tools and they're kind of handled differently. They're out of scope for the main project, right? So new tools, new navigation, and the other thing here that I want everybody to be, make sure that I underscore this point, is that content will continue to be maintained by the schools and units. There's not a central team that can be expert across all the surface area that is a university. So it goes back to that point of collaboration, providing the tools, coordinating with one another, and those areas still have control of their content. And with that, I'm going to let Kimberly talk more about navigation.
So first off, we really want to talk about navigation because it's a big change for us. I think everybody probably recognizes the gold bar. Below that is a change. This is what we're talking about for the new website. The gold bar really is organized based upon how we're organized. And for the end user, that's not as helpful as it could be. So in working with many folks across campus and working with our vendor, looking at best practices, this is the navigation that we're talking about. This helps the end user, again, our prospective student, is that key audience that we're trying to reach. And it helps with the, how do I get a scholarship? How am I going to pay for college? What do I want to study? What if I need help when I want to study? What is it like on campus day to day? And so that is where this white bar, which I promise will not look like a white bar. Chris, if you will move to the next slide, I'll give you a quick look at the new homepage. So this is how the navigation will look when it is open, when it is closed. And I realize you can't see my cursor, but you see the X menu in the upper right corner. That will be what's considered that hamburger menu, those 3 lines that you often see when you're on a mobile platform. Again, we are trying to make connections also. The prospective student is very mobile friendly, very mobile experienced, but we're also trying to make connections with our mobile app, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But you'll see this is how the previous slide had things running horizontally. This is going to be closed, and then you can open it and find your way to admissions. No pun intended, I just used the university tagline there, but you can use admissions, academic support. Info 4 are going to be things like the gateways for faculty and staff information, for current students information, and resources. Those are going to be our utilities, those iSpartan, those Canvas, those pieces. Chris, can you move to the next slide? So we wanted to show you just trying to visualize how does a person move. So you would come to the university homepage. If you want to know more about campus life and resources, you would come to this page. In this case, I'm using the campus life and resources, little quick look at that in place of academics and support, because it is that next level in the information architecture. I will want to say, and I should have said this off the front, whatever we show you here is all placeholder. We are not going to have Minerva on every single web page in terms of her image, and we've got 2 Minerva pictures here. This is all placeholder content. So just wanted to clarify that. But the idea is you go to the university homepage, use the menu to come down to the academics and support area. Chris, can you click to the next? And then you'll be able to find your way to the colleges and schools homepages. So this is a look. All the colleges and schools have, and many university offices are going to have a lot of flexibility. We are talking about creating a design system. There are specific microsite designs. There's going to be about 3 different designs, and this is one of them. And it is focused, this design for College of Visual and Performing Arts is focused very much on photography assets, video assets. So there'll be a lot of pictures, a lot of ability for visual engagement on this. And we want to give that flexibility to folks. So that's the path here is homepage, academics and support would be the second, and then you can find your way to the college and schools homepages. Christy, on the next slide.
So, we've been engaged in this project, I like to joke around that, I feel like I've been engaged in this project for about 4 years, trying to get started and, find a vendor and all that sort of thing. But we started, actually last March around that time and kind of got, started in earnest. And we've done a lot since then. And, if you remember in March, we kind of were surprised with some operational changes in moving remote. And, just like everyone has had to adjust, we've had to adjust in the project and coordinated a lot, through Zoom. It's become, the way that we coordinate and communicate with groups on campus. The things that are highlighted here in gold on this list are things where we had a lot of engagement on campus. All in all, we met with 115 people in the listening tour phase, which was, basically focus groups that we conducted on campus with our partner Vision Point. They came and conducted those focus groups and collected a lot of information about how people use the web and what they felt like needed to change, things that they wish the web would do that it doesn't do today. And we also, have been working very closely with, campus on, designing that information architecture, which you can think of kind of like the way the pages connect together in your navigation. And, on through wireframes, which kind of shows you the different kinds of pages and the kinds of content that are going to be on those pages. And then in the design work, and Kimberly, I don't know if you want to speak, directly to the work that was done and that's ongoing in the design phase.
And
Sure.
Chris,
Go ahead. I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry, Chris, Kimberly, we do have a few questions. I didn't know whether you want us to hold it to the end or whether you want to address questions as they come in.
I'm happy to take them as they come in if it makes it easier.
Yep, great.
I've lost my chat box. There it is.
Yep.
Yeah, I've lost my chat box too. I don't. See if
So
I
yeah,
can find
we
that.
had a question from Janet about the arts and kind of the design, just trying to understand what the final might look like. And I think you see your comment there about the positioning of the arts in relationship to athletics and whether that will be equal or
Well, it's actually removed. So the navigation tabs, the former arts was a tab, and so was athletics and other things. Arts is removed from the one that was shared a moment ago. I'm not quite sure what the intention or the thoughts behind that are, but the arts are a major part of the cultural life of the campus, and a lot of people go to the main page to find out about arts events. So I think that being located only in the College of Visual Performing Arts as an academic unit would be doing a disservice. So I'd like to hear more about that thinking, or maybe that's not the final navigation.
So Janet, I hear what you're saying, and it's not in terms. So the arts, there is a whole section of arts under campus life and resources. So we've repackaged it to really speak more holistically to what's happening on campus. So there will be a section of arts and culture on the campus life and resources page, just like there'll be information there about health and wellness, health and safety. So it's been repackaged in that way, again, thinking of the prospective student seeking to see what is it like on campus, what's happening. And so there is a significant section on the campus life and resources page dedicated to the arts. And so it's not just the college and school. I was just trying to show the progression of a path to the colleges and schools, but it is.
But following that argument, then athletics could go into campus life and resources as well. I mean, perhaps you did Google Analytics and you found that more people hit looking for athletics and the arts, but I guess I see what you're saying, but I see the rationale is slightly different, and obviously I don't agree with it.
And I appreciate your opinion, I do. We also will have an events calendar that will be on the homepage. And so we're trying to, we know that many ways that people engage with campus is coming to athletic events, coming to arts events. Lots of times it's their first connection to the university. And so we're looking at how do we put that best foot forward, engage with the community. And so there will be a calendar in there as well. But I hear what you're saying.
I also think we oftentimes, having been here for a while, we've had a couple of these web conversations, and, it's always really interesting to me because it's sort of like how we're being seen. So the argument of how the prospective student uses the website is always compelling. And of course, we need that. But also, we also talk about being community engaged, and that goes a little bit beyond only prospective students. So community engagement, if I were somebody in the community, new to the community, if I was looking for an arts event, I wanted to go to something at Taylor Theater, I think I would be confused if the only way I could get to it was through campus life. Campus life is not, it wouldn't lead me, I don't think, as a person who was looking for something going on campus. If I wanted to see an arts event, I don't know. I think I would think like, I don't know, fraternities or something, but not necessarily an arts event. So thank you for hearing my comments.
And Kim, we just got a question or a statement in the chat from Kimberly Kapler Hewitt, and she's actually dead on. And thanks for pointing that out, Kimberly. That's one of the things we probably should have said a little stronger up front, is that in the beginning of this process, sort of the direction that we were given, but also when the Web and Mobile Oversight Operating Committee, who is sort of over the governance of this project, One of the things we were looking to address was the previous website was so sort of disjointed in its purpose, right? You couldn't really tell who it was aimed for and designed for. And one of the things that group said is that we feel like our primary target for our website should be prospective students. And we realize that's not everyone who's coming to the website, but that is who we're really trying to target with the design of the site. So that's why a lot of the decisions were made in the way that they were.
That, to that end, all other concerns are not ignored, right? So in some of the things that we're showing you today are summary in nature, just because, they kind of need to be in the context of a presentation like this. But, there's not, content, for other audiences, community-based audiences that are as being completely removed from the design of the primary website. The primary website design is just being focused around the primary audience, a prospective student. There's going to be content there for other audiences, and there's going to be some change here. I mean, that's one of the things that's real about the whenever you go through a redesign, things don't stay exactly the way that they were. I will say, if it kind of helps with the idea of change here, is that the idea is not to just leave everything, make a set of decisions like this born out of recommendations from the vendor who's done a lot of research, has worked with higher ed exclusively, and is based in North Carolina. It's not intended that we will leave this exactly the way that it is and not monitor and look at what's happening on the web and make adjustments. This is just kind of our best first version of this new website around the needs of primary prospective student audience. Some of the things that I mentioned earlier about us being more engaged and collaborative, about the way that we use this new websites and the way that we reorganize, that's absolutely something that we have to do to be successful. The web is a very dynamic kind of medium, and for us to be able to use it effectively, we need to be paying attention to what works and what doesn't work. So
I also want to add, and because it's not functioning, right? And just brings back to designs for a moment. We're going through a process of designing 20 different pages, and we're not through that yet. But I will tell you that on the homepage, if I were able to scroll down and show you, there's going to be some motion and pieces are going to come in from side to side. And it specifically calls out the different audiences that we have. It calls out an area for current students, an area for faculty, staff, an area for alumni, et cetera, et cetera. And so there'll be group coming in. We will have a presence there on the homepage to get to community engagement. I mean, that was something also that we had a lot of discussion about, and that will be there as well. So as Chris was saying, it really is a summary. And so I want to let you know, we do hear the concern, but we're aware that there's more to it than what we're able to show right now. But there are pieces that are there. And I know we have some more questions coming in.
Yes, Kimberly, a couple of questions that are kind of up in the chat. One is links to Canvas and, kind of the pathway for our current online students, thoughts around where that might be. And the other is kind of ETA on when you think the rollout of this will be.
Sure.
Yeah, we're absolutely going to get to talk to some timing sort of things as we get a little bit further into the slides that we have. There are navigation menus for, we call those things like Canvas utilities. They're common links to things that people use every day. And inside of one of the sub navigation items that Kimberly showed in the menu, those utilities are still there. They're just another click.
Okay.
And that's another thing too. Part of the reason we're talking about navigation a little bit is, we want to make sure that, people are understanding that there is going to be some change in the way, things look and the way things are organized. And it is not, it's been done under the best advice, that we could have from our vendor, but very, happy to hear your feedback and, continue to think through some of that. One of the things I would encourage is, again, this kind of, measurable performance kind of perspective on these things. We don't want to leave things, in navigation that don't work. We want to continually assess that navigation and, drive change based off the way that we see our users respond. And Dr. Chow, you can kind of you could kind of speak a little bit to that. We've already been talking about some of those things in terms of usability and kind of ongoing analysis of that long term with this new website.
Yeah, great, Chris. Yeah, I think one of the emerging concerns here is just the quick links to things that we all use like Genie and iSpartan, right? And we don't have to talk about it now, but I'm sure there's analytics behind how often those things are clicked, right? So, but yeah, we can. And I wanted to let everybody know that Chris and Todd and others and Kimberly, they immediately invited the Faculty Senate technology representatives, both from academic computing and online learning, and also I'm in on the committee, the design committee as well. So we definitely have a lot of input, which is one of the reasons why we invited them here, because as Chris and Kimberly said, it's an ongoing discussion, and we can continue providing feedback. So I think what we'll do too for everyone is make sure that we mobilize our tech committees to aggregate and collect data to make sure that we get any concerns to Chris and Kimberly. So, but yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll move on to our next slide and continue to address the questions as they come up. So this is actually a pretty good place for this slide to be for us to talk about the way that we're coordinating with resources. And so, there's various areas on campus, where we've been working with, and some of it is, kind of the executive leadership of the university and with the Web and Mobile Operating Committee, which, has responsibility in, kind of the digital web and mobile space and, digital marketing space with kind of governing those types of platforms and helping establish standards and guidelines for use of tools in that space. But then we've also been trying to organize a little bit better. We've long had a web developers group on campus, and I'm also trying to coordinate with some of the more technical folks in that group so that we can establish some better working standards for developers. And that's also work that's ongoing right now, in addition to the focus groups that we've been talking about. And Kimberly, if you'd like to talk about the cross-functional marketing team that you've been organizing as well.
Sure. The cross-functional marketing communications team came together over the past year, maybe coming up on 2 years, as academic areas were able to begin to have communication directors and marketing directors. So it is a team of about, I think we're about 25 individuals from across the university. We just had a meeting about 2 o'clock today, and we coordinate a number of pieces. They have been instrumental in helping develop this project, everything from the initial feedback to the information architecture to wireframes and now design. They have been true champions in working with us and advocating for their respective needs. And we really appreciate them. They are good folks for you all to reach out to seek information. You, of course, can certainly reach out to the Next Gen Web team, but the marketing and communication leads across both the business units and the colleges and schools they make up the cross-functional team, and they've been just fantastic.
Before we move on, Anthony, do we have any other questions that are unanswered in the chat? I'm seeing things move in. I think you're muted. No, we've lost you.
Yeah, you're muted.
Sorry. From Senator Rinker, will the ability to search the site be made better than it currently is? Currently, the searchability is rather weak.
So I think that you can expect that the search will perform better, largely because the structure of the content will be better. And that's one thing that improves search quite a bit. if you have specific concerns about search, I'd love to talk with you a little bit about that. My technical team runs the search platform, and so I think that that's kind of out of the scope for our conversation here. But if you've got an issue with search, I'd be happy to speak with you specifically about it. But I do think that the project that we're working on will result in search performing better.
So currently where we are is we have reached out to content leads and technical leads across campus and asked them to review their content. Review it for, is it redundant? Is it outdated? Is it trivial? And this is a process where the goal here is to see what needs to be rewritten, what maybe needs no photographs, what needs to be updated, what needs to be sunset as we move closer to the date for when we begin to write and when we begin to set up the new site. So those went out in late December. And we've asked folks to finish reviewing those through March. Some of them did not get them in late December, and we've extended the deadline for those and had a lot of discussion about those. And those are really designed to help each university unit that received them really get ready to prepare their content. Not every website, as Chris said, we have more than 300 across campus received one. It is those that have been identified as having content in this main site that we've asked them to review. Chris, I'll turn it over to you to talk about standards and procedures.
Yeah, so the Web and Mobile Operating Committee, I know that we've mentioned that group several times. It's comprised of representation from across campus. We've got a couple of subcommittees that are working on revising standards and procedures, and we'll be, using those to help make sure that, what we build out of this project, we continue to operate well as we take it into use in the fall. And that's going to, provide guidance for things about, how sites are recommended to be structured, when sites use or do not use subdomains. So, if you've seen a website that's a UNCG website, but it's not www, we'll be spelling out some guidelines about that, refreshing those because we've had some guidelines in the past that are a little bit dated. And then, working on training and then identifying, the kinds of training that we need and who needs to receive it and kind of establishing a program for that. And that's all stuff that is going to be coming from the project. The standards and procedures work, that stuff is in draft. And the other things will be coming with as we get further into the fall. We already spoke a little bit about the content and technical teams that we're working with, and some of that is just again it's that desire to collaborate more and make sure that that we're coordinating across different departments and divisions, and that work is ongoing.
Chris, before you move on, I do want to point out that the image on this page, the slide, is the home page, and that's how the menu looks as I was describing before. Before I showed you open, this is what it looks like when it was closed with the 3 hamburger menu. So this is the home page. And just to continue on the cross-functional teams, the content teams are going to begin to have their introductory meetings next month. And it's about more than 100 roles. I won't say people because there's a number of people who will be filling many roles. But there's more than 100 roles that will be involved with the content. So the cross-functional marketing communications team will be a part of that, but that group of content team will be growing.
Okay, so schedule. Now, I want to also make sure that we're clear about this. All of the unit, school, and departmental web content exists in kind of what we call microsites. They're sites with their own independent navigation and landing pages. They have their own kind of content structures that need to be developed. We need, or we are just beginning meeting with those areas and the staff that support the web to sit down and establish schedules for those specific microsites. This schedule is not for those. We'll be, kind of working with those area resources on a schedule that they can accommodate based off of, current and existing work. And we're going to start working on those schedules now. But this is the schedule for the main website. So whenever we're talking about content up to the school and department websites, this is the schedule to get that ready. So does that make sense to everyone? Did I do a fair job explaining that? So we've got more work to do than what's represented in the schedule. And as we're able to meet with those areas, we'll be making, a schedule like this with them for each of those areas.
So Chris, when you talk about content structure, so is it too late to make suggestions or request kind of the information architecture concerns that are being raised here?
Well, I think that we can take that back into discussion with the Web and Mobile Operating Committee. The current architecture and navigation and those sorts of things are already kind of signed off on, just in terms of the groups that we did review with. But I'm hearing some of the feedback in here, and I think that we can talk with the vendors some more about the choices that we've made. But I think it's reasonable to think about the current design as being final, as final as anything is on the web. But we I don't want to discount any of the feedback that I'm getting either here. So I think that we can take comments from this meeting and some others that we have coming up and take those back into consideration with the Web and Mobile Operating Group, and make choices about any changes from there, because that's really the group that is responsible for approving those final changes.
Yeah, I think that I appreciate that, Chris. I think one of course, a number of all really good concerns. But one of the ones I wanted to mention was the research angle. So obviously, the research and connecting with our colleagues and kind of that pathway, is something that we want to keep very very close to the homepage if we can in terms of a priority. But then the other is the quick links, right? So I think a number again have mentioned that if it's possible to add those quick links at the top or bottom, like a lot of websites do, just because it could be relatively discreet, if you will, but we all use them, so we know where they are. But I think a lot of us have kind of gotten used to that. So because I have to admit, like everyone else, I wouldn't know what the URL to iSpartan is, right? And so maybe that's in your plan, but I think I think most of us like those quick links, because I do go to uncg.edu for those links. So
good points.
Yeah.
Are there other questions before we move on past schedule?
I see that Patricia asked about timeline, and no, this is the little gold icon there at the bottom past October. That's what we're talking about releasing. So certainly not before summer school. We've got a lot of work still ahead of us.
And that date's, the tool that builds the chart is a little strange. That date is actually in November at this point. So it's early November. I want to say the 11th, I think might be right. So, but we're early enough in the schedule that, that date may shift a little bit, based off of things we just don't know. It's the best date that we have. It's the date that is on the schedule for today.
So does that mean we will not begin using this until spring 22?
It means that the site would become active and we would start using it in November for the main site.
In November, in the middle of instructions right when exams are beginning? Really? Is that what is meant by that?
So
well,
curious, Patricia, just how would this impact exams?
Well, I mean, it impacts exams because we're using the website constantly, and we have very distinct ways, we meaning students, faculty, administrators, staff, that access important things at the end of the semester. It's how we get to instruction. It's how we conclude things. It's how we finish a semester. And so we changed that in November. It's like, hello, really? I mean, you know, and I'm not saying that sarcastically. I'm saying that in concern for students, faculty, staff, community, administrators who are on this campus. And this is very concerning. So if we're starting at spring 22, at least it gives us time for training and to change things that we have set up in materials that we use to instruct community, instruct students, to inform other faculty, to inform the administrators. So this is, I think, throwing at least many of us for a little bit of a loop when we see common things that we access on the home page, and that's not there. Those things are not there. So, but I'm sure you've got a pathway that you will get us there. It's just give us time so that we can change our materials to get there.
Sure. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to get in front of this group is, you know, as soon as we had some things to show, so we could get this kind of feedback.
Right. I mean, we've got almost 25,000 people that we're serving here in staff, students, faculty, and administrators. And maybe not quite that many, but it's close. And I agree we need to attend to prospective students, but we also need to attend to our admitted and our enrolled students and our faculty who are on and off campus, and the executives, the administrators, and the staff. Because we are huge, we're very busy.
Sure.
And we're using this website. And it cannot be click your finger and we can make that happen.
Sure.
Because it is very much a part of the materials and information that we give to people. And it will take a lot of checks and balances to make sure all of that ends up in the right place when it opens, the new website opens. November's not the time, I don't think, but excuse me, that's just my thinking on this.
Sure, understood, and we hear that, and we'll definitely take this back as we look at planning and timelines and all of those kinds of things. I can say one of the things that it's clear to me that we need to do a better job communicating some of the other things around this that we are doing in terms of, you know, I think Anthony, you mentioned earlier, I wouldn't know how to get to, you know, iSpartan. So, you know, we've got ispartan.uncg.edu. We've simplified URLs in that way. But one of the things we're trying to do is create, and if you go to that site now, you'll see it's vastly different than probably the last time you saw it. We're trying to create these, I hate to use the word portal, but these portal pages, if you will, that give you that one-click experience for all of those things to be there. But we haven't done
2 clicks. That's 2 clicks.
If you go to the uncg.edu first.
Absolutely.
So that's what I'm trying to say, Patty, is if we can communicate better around these things, these resources that we're trying to set up so that students and faculty and staff do have a better experience, you know, don't have to traverse the homepage, but can go to a site that's more easily set up for these kinds of things.
Well, and I appreciate that perspective, but again, the materials have to be changed.
Exactly.
This is not just a little bit of materials. This is a lot.
Right. Understood.
And, but I mean, I respect and I appreciate your hard work on this and your expertise in the area. But we do have to have time. It can't be here, we're changing this in November, you know, right in the middle of what we're doing.
Sure.
And so, or right near the middle to end. So I appreciate you listening to what I just said, but
yeah, and I hear you. I do. We'll definitely take that back.
Yeah.
It is really good feedback. And, you know, it's, we don't, because the web is so big, and I'm sorry if you hear my dog in the background, apparently someone is outside here. We don't always know how people are using some of the existing pages that we have. And so part of the collaborating and talking with one another, this is great information for us to have. You know, it is not a thing, you know, we absolutely want to avoid, you know, kind of impact and increase of work or stress for people. life is already stressful enough for all of us. And this project is important, and we think that it's going to dramatically improve, the quality of interaction that we have. But we can absolutely plan around some of these concerns that everyone is raising, and I appreciate you, being willing to share that with us and allowing us the time to go through this with you.
Thank you.
We have a few more slides here. If we can continue, I'd like to keep going. And
we have a couple more questions, but let's continue, and then we'll end with questions.
yeah, we got two more, and then I think we can address any of the remaining questions. So, things that we're going to be working on next. The first thing that we're trying to get done is we're finishing the designs that the vendor has been working on, looking at the feedback that we've been getting from the stakeholder groups that we've been collaborating with. Making sure that the changes that have come in through those channels have been taken back to the vendor, and that they are updating the designs to reflect those. So we do still have some design work that is being finished. Kimberly, do you want to speak to the photo and video assets point?
Sure. So I'm sure many of you know Martin Kane and Greg Gilliard in University Communications. I've asked them to reach out, and they're specifically reaching out to your communications and marketing directors to see about getting some new photos for the website, to make sure where we have a new design and we have new abilities, there's going to be the ability to show more. And so I've reached out to them, and they're trying to book some time. If you all would like to, book some time with them for them to come to classes, that's great. I say that knowing full well that a lot of the classes are like this. There's pictures of people in masks and caution tape and social distancing. So we recognize that the challenge is there, but we are trying to be prepared for what we will need. The good news is we have a very, very large library of, I think, about 60,000 images of campus. But of course, we always like to use the newest and the latest and the greatest. So University Communications, you might see them out taking some more photos and stuff with the intent for the web for the future. Chris, do you want to talk about the planning colleges and microsites?
Yeah, and I think I've already touched on this just a little bit, but just know that as we look at we get into specific areas of the university, we haven't planned those schedules yet. So the schedule that we will convert, for instance, with the Bryan School or with the college, those areas we need to sit down and actually map out a realistic plan for how we take kind of what's there in those areas and map it back into the new structure and the new tools and templates that we're going to provide. And that's something that we're just getting started sitting down with staff and leadership in those areas to plan those things. So that's coming up here as well. And then the last item here is we've got some links in the presentation. I think that you all will have access to the slides after we finish the meeting. These are just some places that you can go to learn a little bit more about kind of some of the groups that we talked about and what's going on with the project. There's the homepage for the Web Mobile Operating Committee, the project status page for the web project itself. And then there's a go link there that takes you to a knowledge article that's got some of the pieces that we've gotten back from the project. That is the information architecture, the wireframes, and some of the kind of live prototypes for the designs that we have are also linked up there. So, and we'll keep updating that page as we finalize those things, and you can keep up to date with what's current by visiting that knowledge article. And that's the slides, and we've already taken some questions, but we are very happy to continue to answer them.
No, we again appreciate all the work that you all have done and the expertise that you've brought to making sure that we have such a good web presence. So I think before we address some of these other questions, just want to echo Patty's point about obviously whenever there is a disruption for our students, it means lots of emails, right? And so I think just that alone, definitely, if possible, in terms of timing, if we could move it to the beginning of a semester, I think that would be really preferable for all of us, because of course what happens is when we start getting those emails about something that's not related to our course, that really becomes a major inhibitor. And of course, students are very anxious during that time as well. And then the other thing I would say, of course, is please forgive us, but we're, of course, many of us, actually all of us have patterns in how we use the website, right? So any change, of course, is going to be disruptive. But I think that in terms of kind of our mental schemata on how we access certain things, definitely as much as we can compromise on keeping some of these quick links, ideally, I think would be wonderful, just because the design looks great, but at the same time, as it's been expressed multiple times, there are certain things that we use the website for, right? And I think that there's some consistency as far as iSpartan, Canvas, things like that, and maybe we can compromise in terms of maybe just giving us those links that we've used to for years. So I'm here 15 years, so 15 years in which I've clicked on those links, and I think that might be helpful. So. But with that being said, so Janet had a question about the search process. In the revision process, will the search bar remain on the home page? And if so, will the search function be improved? And I know you talked a little bit about that, Chris, but
yeah, one of the things that improves search, whether you use an internal tool like we do, just to index and provide search just for the UNCG sites, or Google or some other search providers doing it, is the structure of the content will often help improve results. So we can configure around some of that with the tool that we have inside. I can't really configure Google and make it do anything other than what it does. We have to kind of cater to it if we want to improve search results with them. But internally, we have some flexibility. So if there are things that are not showing up that you feel should, that's an opportunity for us to talk a little bit about that, and for us to potentially make some changes that would improve the results you get back for certain keywords that you're searching for. So I welcome that kind of feedback. It's one of the things that, definitely as we go into the new web, I think the structure we have will produce better results, but still there are going to be certain things that we're going to want to configure around to make sure that the absolute right result is at the top of the list.
I see Kelly has her hand raised.
Yes, Kelly, go ahead.
Yeah, as a member of WAMO, I just wanted to point out to everybody that I'm hearing anecdotes, as we all should be, from the faculty and how you individually use our website. Please be assured that there was a lot of analytics and heat mapping and tons of data behind in the RFP. And the reason I voted for this vendor was the level of their analysis of how inefficient our website is just blew me away. And we can't afford to have them do everything they said they could do for us. So I agree, these have been some great things, and I don't want the favicons to go away either, because they're so cute. But rest assured, this is not just willy-nilly on the part of ITS.
That's a good context, Kelly, for sure. So I think as we're nearing the end of our time, I mean, obviously any new website or any new product there's a degree of frustration and pain because it's changing the way we've done things in the past. So, but I would definitely say, as much as the Faculty Senate can help identify these pathways for faculty, maybe provide them a voice to identify the top 3 or 5 ways that they use the website, something like that might be helpful in terms of easing the transition and giving the faculty a voice that this kind of, identify again, as Kelly said, not anecdotally, but maybe statistically, how they're using things. And again, you may have the analytics for that already, but I don't know. I think that might help ease the transition a little bit, just providing that opportunity to provide that input. So.
Well, we're very grateful for the time and the feedback that we've already gotten. And, if there's more feedback, please, get that to Kimberly and myself. We're happy to talk more. If you'd like us to come back at some point and give an update, happy to do that as well.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, we appreciate your time. And again, the offer still stands as far as trying to collect those a few things that have been identified here again, I think that that might be a service that we could provide, just to again have faculty identify those priorities, or you may already have the analytics behind that in terms of how the faculty are using the site.
Well, I would, I definitely think that it's would be good for us to have, kind of firsthand account, from faculty about how they use the site. And so if that's something that we could, work on together so
Sure.
that we could collect it in a central way.
Yeah.
Can I speak with you directly about how we might do that? And maybe we can send out a collection method, an email or something to the group.
Absolutely. Great. I appreciate that.
Okay.
And to everyone, thank you for, again, your time and joining us and your passion for UNCG. And again, we really appreciate Chris, Todd, and Kimberly. We didn't mean to be mean, and we appreciate all your work on this project and soliciting feedback. And we'll continue having these conversations. So thanks again for everybody's hard work. Be safe, stay well, and take care.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.